World. We start this hour with some breaking news, and as per a report by a Russian official, a senior Russian officer, Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev, has been shot. The Moscow prosecutor's office has said Alexeyev has been shot several times at a residential building in northwest Moscow by an unknown assailant who fled the scene. Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyev has been rushed to hospital following the incident. Alexeyev is the Deputy Chief of the Main Directorate of the General Staff at the Defense Ministry. When mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin staged a short-lived mutiny in June 2023, Alexeyev was one of the top officials who were sent to negotiate with him. Several senior Russian officers have been assassinated since the start of the war in Ukraine, with Moscow blaming the attacks on Kyiv. In some cases, Ukrainian military intelligence has claimed responsibility. The most recent officer to be killed was the head of the General Staff's Army Training Directorate, Lieutenant General Fanil Sararov, who was killed by a bomb under his car on the 22nd of December of last year. We'll, of course, continue to bring you all the updates coming out of that developing story as soon as we get them, but we are now joined by Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar to discuss this breaking news in a bit further detail. He's an international relations expert. He joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Kochar. Some big news coming out of Moscow. We've of course seen multiple figures assassinated on Russian soil over the tenure of this four-year war. This individual is not dead. He has been rushed to hospital, but it just goes to show the intelligence and the infiltration that Ukraine has on the ground. What's your reaction to this breaking news?
Thank you, Thomas. I think this is a very serious development because he's a very senior ranking officer of the Russian army, and we have to understand two things. One is ethnicity. Ukraine and Russia have a great amount of similar ethnicity, and therefore infiltration of those Ukraine intelligence into Russia is not that difficult because of those people-to-people contacts are available. And this is not the first time, as you rightly said. We have seen a number of assassinations, not only of senior security personnel or army officials, but also of senior functionaries in the government. And many a times, certain conjectures were also being made that maybe Putin wanted them to be eliminated, but that by far is not the fact. So we have seen Ukraine intelligence being very, very active in these areas, and therefore this purge inside Russia is nothing new as far as we are concerned here. And as we understand geopolitics of that region, and this will continue to happen because even if you have a ceasefire in times to come, this kind of incident, as we call it, the hybrid warfare, this hybrid warfare mechanism, you will not be able to rule out because of the kind of volatility in the relations between the two countries. And there has been a lot of acrimony also as of now. Also, there is the borders are quite active with the Russian forces also carrying out offensive. Every day we are hearing of this developments in Ukraine where the Russians are targeting the on energy infrastructure and other areas. So I think this will be a setback. I am of the opinion that this will be a setback to the ongoing efforts to create an atmosphere for Russian and the Ukraine leaders to sit down and have talks. And recently, I believe a French president also made an overture that he would like to meet Putin and try to work out some kind of a negotiation to end the war. So, this particular development, I have a feeling, will be a setback to the peace process.
Indeed. And in terms of how the Ukrainian military is taking its actions inside Russia, of course, what we can confirm, Ukraine hasn't confirmed its participation in this. The individual, Alexeyev, also is not dead. However, Ukraine's operations inside Russia has been wide-scoped, to say the least, even given the capabilities of Russian intelligence and how small Ukraine is. What does it say about the power of Western intelligence sharing, something which, of course, Ukraine has been a benefactor of during the tenure of this war?
Thomas is absolutely correct, because we have seen how Starlink has been a great factor for the Ukrainians after the cyber attack was launched by the Russians. The Starlink restored everything in 48 hours. So we have seen this kind of a thing. And we've also seen CIA working very, very closely with the Ukrainian intelligence, and the kind of information they are able to generate is tremendous. This war has actually proved it, that intelligence operations, intelligence-backed operations, are the backbone for the success of any offensive. And wherever Ukraine has achieved success, it has been largely to this extent that their intelligence-based operations have been supported or have been augmented by the American intelligence agencies, including the MI6 from Great Britain. So there have been absolutely no doubt on this, that these kind of intelligence which the Ukrainians are getting from the Americans as well as from the British are certainly helping them to create a impact on the Russians.
Another guest, Dr. Gilbert Doctorow joins us. He's a Russian affairs expert. He joins us live from Moscow. Gilbert, thank you very much, first of all, for joining us and taking the time. This breaking news that's just come through, Lieutenant General Alexeyev has been shot inside Moscow. Your initial reaction, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the individual who has been targeted by this apparent assassination attempt.
The General Alexeyev is a military intelligence officer, and he would be in the chain of command under the head of the Russian negotiating team at Abu Dhabi. So this would get the attention immediately of the top Kremlin leadership. I think he was shot in the hall by the elevators in his apartment building, which is in central Moscow. This will get the attention of the top leadership. It will direct Russia towards much harsher terms in the negotiations and conclusion of a peace, by which I mean they will do everything possible to ensure the overthrow of the Zelensky regime, which they consider, as this incident demonstrates, to be a terrorist organization.
Doctor, you're saying this is a significant event, especially in the same context as ongoing peace talks, direct peace talks, may I add, between Russia and Ukraine. What kind of response could we expect?
Well, as I say, the Russians will immediately harden their turns and take the conclusion of a peace treaty a little bit farther away from us in time, because they are going to be demanding a capitulation which does not look pretty. They are going to be demanding a humiliating capitulation, which ensures the overthrow of the Zelensky government regime, which they consider as typified by what we saw today in the slaughter of a high general in intelligence. in Moscow to be a terrorist regime.
And what does it say about the current Ukrainian operations? Of course, they're conceding land on the battlefield front. However, as I just put to Dr. Kochar, the operations inside Russia, there has been some successful assassination attempts of certain high-ranking officials, influencers, other figures, and people inside the Russian military. What does it say about the current intelligence that is operating inside Moscow?
You see this intelligence network which is operating right inside Moscow. See, you cannot prevent 100% stoppage of these kind of incidents, because Moscow or Russia is a fairly large country, and there are large a number of activities, and the way the intelligence and the espionage networks actually work, it becomes extremely difficult to pick up every piece of information. And what the adversary is also trying to do is he's trying to ensure that you don't pick up those signals of communication, because today the kind of encryption and a kind of secrecy and stealth is being used with the latest technology, with artificial intelligence, quantum computing coming into the play. So it becomes very, very difficult for a country to be able to identify these kind of attacks, and and that is why they happen.
Gilbert, I want to go back to you next. The situation on the ground. What will the people and the Kremlin on the ground in Russia be currently thinking about how to organise, how to respond? And as I've asked Dr. Kochar, what will the response be? Apologies. What does it say about Ukrainian intelligence and espionage operating on the ground inside the Russian capital, Dr. O?
I'd like to differentiate this killing from the two previous assassinations of Russian generals in 2025. In both of those instances, the murder took place by remote. That is to say, the Ukrainians had bought the services of a Russian or a Ukrainian who was sent for this mission to set up explosives outside the residences of their intended victim, and to detonate these explosives by remote. This was a direct personal attack by someone who was performing the mission at great risk, but who succeeded in getting away. So it shows a certain brazenness and a certain va-banque, that is to go all out to get what you want done. The intelligence, as my fellow panelist was saying, it is almost impossible to protect against all of the potential assassinations of high-level Russian officers. There are a great many of them. They mostly live in ordinary residential complexes. And so to have 100% protection is almost excluded. That this happened just now is also bears on the question that you raised about the state of warfare on the ground in Donetsk, particularly Oblast in the Donbass. The fact there's a direct correlation between the losses on the battlefield and increasing terrorist activity. Terrorism is almost by definition an act of desperation of a losing side in a war.
Indeed, and of course, going into these talks next in Abu Dhabi, is this going to undo all the work that was done when it comes to the negotiations resuming? We've seen a prisoner swap, a pledge in the continuation of dialogue from both sides. Will this be a breaking point, especially as it's come, as things seemed to be moving forward, Dr. Kochar?
Gilbert has also made a mention of that. So the peace talks are going to get affected because a kind of a hardening of stance from the Russians is going to take place. And it's rather unfortunate because there seem to be some elements in Ukraine who want to derail these peace talks. I think Zelensky is not too keen right now to talk peace because the uh, part is that they want to include a return of territory, a return of captured territory because it affects the sovereignty of Ukraine and especially his standing in front of his own people. And European Union seems to be supporting him on that, including countries like Great Britain and France, where the statements are coming about that Russia needs to also talk about a return of certain areas in Donbass or the other areas which Russia captured, which Russia has made a very clear statement that it is non-negotiable. It's a red line for them. They will not talk about anything concerning return of territory. They would like to have a ceasefire. They can stop their offensives, exchange prisoners of war, security guarantees can be talked about and put in your place. But Russia is not going to accept anything as far as a return of the captured areas are concerned. So that
Yes.
becomes a very ticklish point in this negotiation. And I think that's why these kind of intelligence-based operations are taking place in Russia to further complicate those talks which are going to take place.
Yes, Dr. Kochar, do stay with us. I want to thank our guest, Dr. Gilbert Doctorow, for joining us here on NewsX World. A great pleasure to talk to you on these issues as always, and we'll of course bring you all the updates coming out and any confirmations we get on that ongoing situation in Moscow as soon as we get it here on NewsX World. We now turn to Oman, and the long-awaited talks between Iran and the United States have officially started in Muscat. The discussions are focused on Iran's nuclear program, with both sides